Welcome, curious minds. Tonight we travel back to a world where truth and justice were decided not by lawyers in suits, but by fire, water, and the sheer stubbornness of human belief. Picture this. The year is somewhere around the 12th century, in a quiet medieval village. A crowd gathers near a stone churchyard, eyes wide with anticipation. No, they're not waiting for a new episode of Game of Thrones. They're waiting to see if a man can dip his hand into boiling water and come out innocent. Because in their world, God himself was thought to be the ultimate judge, and his verdict came bubbling in a cauldron. The smell of smoke and iron lingers in the air. You can almost hear the murmur of prayers, mixed with the nervous whispers of gossip. Some villagers clutch their rosaries. Others are probably just there for the medieval version of free entertainment. Imagine being accused of stealing a chicken, and instead of paying a fine, you're told, "Just dip your hand in this steaming pot, and if you're truly innocent, no blister will appear." It's like a divine hot tub challenge, but the stakes are your life and reputation. Before we start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, only if you enjoy unlocking the mysteries of history with me. And in the comments, tell me, would you have trusted this trial if your life depended on it? Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock history together. As you watch, imagine yourself standing in that very crowd, the flames dancing, the cauldron bubbling, and the accused looking pale as a ghost. Would you believe in this trial by ordeal? Or would you quietly whisper to your neighbor, "This feels less like God's will and more like a recipe for soup"? You push closer, squeezing past woolen cloaks and the pungent smell of sweat from the crowd. At the center of the churchyard stands a massive black iron cauldron, hanging above the fire. Flames lick hungrily at its belly, making the water inside churn and bubble like it's boiling with rage. A priest in a long robe steps forward, holding a cross, chanting Latin words you can't understand. Yet to the villagers, every syllable sounds like a divine seal of approval. The ritual unfolds with strict ceremony. First, the priest sprinkles holy water around the cauldron, just to make sure this is God-certified boiling water, and not the regular noodle-making kind. Then, an iron bar or a stone is dropped into the pot as the object of trial. The accused, perhaps guilty of nothing more than stealing a loaf of bread, must plunge their hand into the scalding water and retrieve it before everyone's eyes. The crowd holds its breath. You hear whispers, will God prove him innocent? Or maybe his hand will turn into a sausage. Children stand on tiptoes, wide-eyed, more excited than at the village fair. To them, this isn't justice. It's the best live circus in town. When the accused steps forward, hands trembling, you feel your own chest tighten. Imagine being in his place. A single moment decides everything. Your honor, your freedom, even your life. And you have no control. According to the ritual, your hand will be inspected days later. If no blister appears, you are innocent. If it burns, well, God has spoken. Unfair? Absolutely. But to the medieval mind, this was justice. They believed that if you were innocent, God would shield your flesh from fire and water. If guilty, the boiling cauldron would expose you faster than the sharpest lawyer of our age. Don't you wonder, though, did anyone ever think, what if we just let the pot cool a little first? Or were they all too terrified to even question it? It was a moment both chilling and absurd, where justice literally steamed and bubbled away. The accused finally steps forward. He's not a knight, not a noble, not even the town drunk. He's just a farmer, a man who spends his days bent over the soil, cursing rocks and praying for rain. Yet here he is, standing in the center of the churchyard, trembling as if the ground itself might swallow him whole. You watch the crowd's whispers coil around him like smoke. The accusation? He stole a chicken. Just one. No feathers in his home, no witnesses, only the angry word of a neighbor who swore his prized hen vanished. And in a world without fingerprints, CCTV, or even the concept of innocent until proven guilty, the only path left was trial by ordeal. Imagine the weight pressing on his chest. If he refuses, he's already guilty. If he agrees, his flesh will meet boiling water. His neighbors peer at him, some suspicious, some secretly hoping he fails, because who doesn't love a bit of drama? The priest raises his hand, reminding everyone that God alone will reveal the truth. You feel the tension tighten, like the moment before a sword duel. Now, here's the strange part. You wonder, what if he really did steal the chicken? Would he hope for some divine loophole, or believe he could trick heaven itself? And if he's innocent, would he still tremble, knowing that blisters can appear on anyone's skin? You can almost hear the man's heartbeat echoing louder than the church bells. The farmer takes a deep breath. His eyes meet the steaming cauldron. It hisses, bubbles, spits, like a living beast waiting to claim its victim. The moment of no return draws near, and you realize this isn't just about a chicken. It's about faith, fear, and the terrifying gamble of trusting your skin to God's judgment. You stand in the crowd as the priest steps forward. He wears a long black robe trimmed with white lace, clutching a weathered Bible in his hands. His voice rises and falls, not just reciting prayers, but reminding the entire village that this is no game. It is a sacred ritual. He begins chanting passages in ancient Latin. Each syllable echoes heavily across the churchyard, reverberating against the cold stone walls. The crowd bows their heads in unison. Some whisper along. Others keep their eyes fixed on the cauldron, bubbling and steaming like an iron beast. You can feel faith and fear weaving together in the air. The priest raises his hand high, as if calling heaven itself to witness. He declares, God will not let the innocent suffer harm. A few villagers nod vigorously, convinced they've just heard absolute truth. Others tilt their heads ever so slightly, their eyes betraying quiet doubt, because everyone knows boiling water burns. Yet no one dares to speak against it. You watch the farmer kneel, his trembling hands pressed together. Perhaps he prays for a miracle, or at least that his skin survives the ordeal for just a few seconds. Steam from the cauldron coils upward, mixing with rays of sunlight piercing through the church windows. The scene looks almost like a stage play of mystery, where God, man, and fire together hold the fate of one soul. The bubbling water merges with the priest's chant, creating a rhythm like an ancient drum driving the ritual toward its climax. And in that moment, you can't help but wonder, if the priest's words are true, then a single hand plunging into boiling water and emerging unharmed would be divine proof for all to see. But if not, there will be one more blistered hand and one more fear carved into the heart of the village. There's no turning back now. The ritual has officially begun. The priest lowers his hand and the villagers shuffle closer. You feel the heat rising from the cauldron even at a distance, like a dragon exhaling. The accused farmer is brought forward, his face pale, sweat already streaking down his brow, though the test has not yet begun. His knees wobble as if they might give way, but two men stand beside him, ready to steady him or prevent him from fleeing. A hush falls. You could hear a pin drop, or perhaps just the faint hiss of water roiling in the pot. Then the ritual's most critical moment arrives. The priest takes a small iron ladle, dips it into the cauldron, and stirs the boiling water. The sound is sickening, like soup bubbling too violently, except this soup is about to decide a man's innocence. The rules are explained aloud, so that no one can later claim ignorance. The farmer must reach in, seize a stone from the bottom, and pull it out with his bare hand. If he emerges without burns, or if the burns heal miraculously within 3 days, it proves his innocence. If his skin blisters, then God has spoken. Guilty. You imagine yourself in his place. Could you keep your hand steady, knowing the pain that awaits? Would you hesitate or plunge your hand in quickly as if speed might trick the fire? The thought alone makes your own fingers curl in dread. A murmur runs through the crowd. Some whisper prayers, others exchange bets, as though the outcome were a grim sport. A child tugs at her mother's sleeve and asks too loudly, "But won't it hurt?" The mother hushes her, casting nervous glances at the priest. Finally, the moment arrives. The farmer steps forward. His hand hovers over the cauldron, trembling like a leaf in the wind. You watch as the steam licks his skin, making it glisten with sweat. His lips move silently, perhaps in one last desperate plea to heaven. And then in a single breath, he plunges his hand into the boiling water. The crowd gasps as one. The crowd gasps as the farmer's hand plunges beneath the surface, and you swear you hear the hiss of flesh meeting heat. The boiling water churns as if alive, bubbling angrily around his wrist. For a heartbeat, time itself seems to stop. You feel your own fingers curl in sympathy, as though your body instinctively recoils from the imagined burn. He struggles for a moment, reaching blindly for the stone at the bottom. You can see his knuckles whiten under the strain, his teeth gritted so tightly, you wonder if they might crack. Finally, his hand emerges, clutching the small, smooth rock, steam rising off his reddened skin. The sight is almost unbearable, as if someone had pulled out a piece of the sun and dared to hold it barehanded. The villagers erupt in a chorus of whispers. Some cross themselves, others lean in eagerly to get a closer look. Did God shield him, or did the flames claim another victim? You sense the collective tension, everyone waiting, desperate for a sign. The priest examines the hand, his expression unreadable. The skin is angry and red, yet not blistered, at least not yet. According to custom, the true verdict would not be immediate. The hand would be bound, sealed in holy cloth, and checked after 3 days. If the wound festered or blistered, it meant guilt. If it healed clean, the accused was declared innocent, cleared by divine judgment. 3 days. Imagine the agony, not just physical, but psychological. Every hour, the farmer would stare at his hand, praying it would not bubble with blisters. Every villager would whisper, gossiping about his fate. It was less a trial than a cruel waiting game, one where faith was the only medicine. You can't help but wonder, what if the water had cooled just a little? What if the priest had stirred it longer, or less? In truth, so much depended not on God, but on chance, human error, and the whims of heat. Yet in their eyes, it was the heavens themselves passing judgment. The priest raises his voice, declaring the ritual complete. The farmer is led away, his hand wrapped tightly in white linen, his face pale but strangely relieved. For now, he is neither guilty nor innocent, merely suspended in a divine pause. And you, standing among the crowd, feel the weight of the silence settle again. You've just witnessed justice or something like it, but the question lingers. Was it truly God's will, or just boiling water doing what boiling water does? 3 days pass, and you find yourself once again standing in the heart of the village. The square feels heavier now, as though the air itself has been holding its breath since the farmer plunged his hand into the cauldron. The smell of smoke and boiled herbs lingers faintly, as if the memory of the ordeal refuses to fade. You see the villagers gathering, some clutching rosaries, some carrying baskets of food, as if this were both a sacred ritual and a form of entertainment. Children are hoisted onto shoulders, their wide eyes peering over the crowd. Everyone knows today is the day of reckoning. At the center, the priest approaches with solemnity. His voice is low but commanding as he begins to unwrap the bandages. The entire crowd leans forward like a single living creature, eager to glimpse the truth. Your heart races with theirs, and you wonder, is this really about justice, or is it about spectacle? Because here, in this 12th century village, truth is not proven by logic, evidence, or testimony. No, it is revealed through the blistering will of God. The farmer stands pale, his hand trembling slightly as the linen strips are peeled away. The whispers spread like wildfire. Some swear they can already see healthy flesh. Others whisper about ominous redness. You imagine yourself in his place, waiting 3 long days, knowing that your entire life, your honor, and maybe even your family's survival depends on whether your skin looks blessed or cursed. Then comes the moment. The final layer falls away. Gasps ripple through the crowd. His hand is revealed under the light. Smooth skin, innocence. Blistered flesh, guilt. In that instant, history and superstition hang in perfect balance. And you can't help but think, what if, just what if, the priest's eyesight was poor, or the bandage was wrapped too tightly? Or maybe someone helped the wound along while nobody was watching? Could fate itself be nudged by human hands? In a world like this, belief in divine justice could easily be mixed with a dash of manipulation. The villagers await the verdict, their faith trembling between hope and fear. You stand there too, a silent witness to a justice system where truth is less about facts and more about fire, scars, and faith. A heavy silence falls after the wound is revealed. You can feel every pair of eyes in the crowd fixed on that hand as if it were the key to both heaven and hell. The priest stares at the flesh, brows furrowed, then takes a deep breath, preparing to speak. But before his verdict can be heard, the villagers begin to whisper, each one already delivering their own sentence in their minds. An old woman in the front row shakes her head relentlessly, swearing this is a sign of guilt. A blacksmith nearly growls that the farmer has been vindicated by God. These clashing voices rise, swelling into a storm of chaos that threatens to shatter the small square. You stand there, swept along by the tide of rumor, sensing that justice here is not handed down by some unseen deity, but forged by the collective will forcing truth into their preferred shape. Meanwhile, the farmer trembles, his weary eyes searching desperately for salvation. You imagine what might be racing through his mind. Perhaps he prays that someone sees the truth, or maybe he just hopes for the crowd's mercy. And then a strange thought flickers in your own mind. What if with just a few coins, a whispered bargain in the shadows, the priest could see something else? Could his fate shift in an instant? In real history, records exist of these ordeals being subtly manipulated. Sometimes the water wasn't truly boiling. Sometimes the bandages were treated with soothing herbs. But the villagers never knew, and their faith was so absolute that any doubt could be branded as blasphemy. At last, the priest raises his hand and silence sweeps the square like a sudden chill. Everyone holds their breath, waiting for his verdict. Will it be acquittal or guilt? And you wonder, in a world where justice depends on the texture of blistered skin, is truth really still truth? The priest clears his throat, his voice echoing over the hushed crowd. This man is guilty. The words strike like a hammer blow. Gasps ripple through the villagers, some crossing themselves, others nodding as if justice has been neatly wrapped up. But you sense the unease, the doubt, lingering like smoke in the air. Was it truly God's verdict, or just a man's judgment cloaked in divine authority? The farmer collapses to his knees, pleading desperately, but the murmurs of the crowd swallow his cries. In medieval Europe, guilt meant far more than shame. It could mean losing land, freedom, even life. You imagine the weight of this moment pressing on him, his family watching helplessly, his neighbors distancing themselves as though guilt were a contagious plague. And yet, as you stand in that square, another thought creeps into your mind. What if the priest had declared him innocent instead? Would the same villagers who now brand him a thief be shouting his praises, swearing God had protected him? History is filled with moments where truth hinged not on evidence, but on performance, on what people wanted to believe. In the 13th century, even kings and nobles sometimes used ordeals to prove loyalty or divine favor. Imagine a knight accused of treachery dipping his hand in the cauldron. If he emerged unharmed, he might be hailed as chosen by God. If not, well, it was an easy way to rid yourself of rivals. Convenient, isn't it? The farmer is dragged away, his face pale, his fate sealed by blisters. The crowd begins to disperse, their whispers fading into the cool evening air. And you, standing there, an invisible witness, are left with a lingering question. In a world where justice burns skin instead of finding truth, how many innocent souls were lost to the flames? You're still standing there in your mind, but the crowd has dispersed. The fire in the cauldron is out, leaving only ashes and scorched marks on the ground. But let your imagination wander a little further. If you could pick up a fragment of that ash, carry it forward into the present, and place it in a modern courtroom, what would happen? The judge, the lawyers, the jury, they'd probably laugh, wouldn't they? A trial by ordeal? Instead of evidence, witnesses, or forensic science, they relied on a pot of boiling water. And yet for centuries, all of Europe put its faith in it. In history, trials by ordeal weren't limited to boiling water. People also used red-hot iron and even cold water. In 11th century England, some were thrown into ponds. If they sank, they were innocent, but might drown. If they floated, they were guilty, because holy water rejected the sinner. A rule so absurd that even Newton or Archimedes, had they lived then, couldn't have justified it with science. Imagine yourself being falsely accused, stealing a loaf of bread, for example. No court, no lawyer, only the choice of placing your hand on glowing hot iron or being hurled into a river. If you survived, they called it God's will. If you died, well, that was God's will too. A game with no winning outcome unless luck or a hidden human hand tipped the scales. But here's a bold thought. What if these ordeals actually worked? What if the divine really did intervene, keeping the flesh of the innocent from burning? Would the history of law be different? Maybe today we wouldn't need lawyers at all, just a cauldron and a prayer. It sounds insane, but it's chilling enough to remind you. Sometimes progress doesn't come because humans got smarter, but simply because we grew terrified enough to abandon old cruelties. In the cold evening breeze of imagination, you feel something unsettling. Justice itself was once wrapped in physical pain. And you can't help but wonder, has modern justice truly become fairer? Or is it merely dressed up in suits, briefcases, and expensive arguments? You stand in the middle of that medieval square, the crowd beginning to murmur less about the bandages and more about the meaning behind them. The question rises like smoke from the dying embers. Was this justice, or just fear wrapped in the name of God? You can almost hear the villagers whispering. Some cross themselves and sigh with relief. God has spoken. Others glance nervously, wondering if what they saw was fairness or simply survival dressed as faith. You realize something strange. Justice here wasn't about evidence, reason, or even truth. It was about what people believed would keep them safe at night. Imagine it. In a world where literacy was rare and courts were distant luxuries, belief itself was the courtroom. To them, the cauldron wasn't just a pot of water. It was the voice of heaven. But you can't help asking yourself, were they chasing fairness or merely terrified of divine punishment? After all, if everyone agrees that God decides, who dares question the result? Your mind drifts to an unsettling thought. If fear can keep order, is that really justice? Or just a society too scared to rebel? You picture yourself accused again, not of stealing chickens this time, but of questioning the ordeal itself. Would people turn on you, call you a heretic, throw you into the very flames you doubted? And here's where the what if creeps back in. What if justice had never shifted away from ordeal and superstition? What if entire civilizations kept relying on fire, boiling water, or cold rivers to settle disputes? Would human law have evolved at all? Or would we still gather around churchyards, clutching rosaries, waiting for the next unlucky soul to prove innocence through pain? The more you think about it, the less certain you feel. Maybe justice, then and now, isn't about truth. It's about what society can't bear to question. In that moment, you look at the villagers' faces, some satisfied, some uneasy, all bound together not by fairness but by fear. And the whisper in your own mind grows louder. Is justice ever truly just, or is it only ever the mask fear decides to wear? You're still standing in that scene, but your imagination begins to pull you further on a new journey. If superstition once held an entire village in order, then how would science, the thing you're familiar with today, replace it? Picture yourself carrying a microscope into this medieval square. You set it before the priest and say, "Father, it isn't God deciding, it's bacteria." Chances are, you wouldn't get the chance to explain further, as the crowd would likely drag you away as a heretic. In reality, it took centuries for people to slowly abandon the trials of God. By the 13th century, the Catholic Church officially banned these ordeals, replacing them with testimony and evidence. Yet even then, justice was not clearly defined, because now it was humans, not divinity, serving as the ultimate arbiters. Imagine yourself sitting in one of those later trials, with lawyers and witnesses. A step forward, certainly, but was it truly more just? Or was it simply a new kind of superstition, cloaked in legal language instead of prayer? And this is where your imagination drifts even further. What if those ancient ordeals had never been abolished? What if in the 21st century a modern courtroom still had its boiling water day? Picture judges in robes, jurors sitting stiffly, and in the middle, a massive cauldron. The defense lawyer steps forward confidently. "My client will prove his innocence by dipping his hand into boiling water." You might burst out laughing, but the crowd would nod solemnly, as though no argument were needed. That's when it hits you. The boundary between science and superstition, between law and belief, is thinner than we often think. Even after leaving behind cauldrons, hot irons, and freezing ponds, humans still search for something to trust completely. Today, it might be forensic evidence, fingerprints, or security cameras. But is it really so different from once believing that fire and water could deliver justice? A daring thought creeps into your mind. Perhaps justice has never been an absolute truth, but simply a shared belief upheld by the majority. And when belief changes, justice changes with it. Picture this. You're seated in a bright modern courtroom, but instead of a judge in a black robe, you see a chef's hat towering behind the bench. The gavel, a ladle. The jury, they're holding chopsticks and looking a little too excited. Welcome to the 21st century revival of the trial by boiling water, except now it looks suspiciously like hot pot night gone wrong. You watch as the accused shuffles nervously forward. Instead of taking an oath on a holy book, they're handed a long metal spoon. The charge? Tax evasion. The punishment? Dipping a hand into a bubbling broth full of chili peppers, mushrooms, and a suspiciously floating quail egg. The crowd leans forward, smartphones ready. This is justice by live stream. The first splash sends up a puff of steam and the audience gasps. But then the prosecutor interrupts, demanding fairness. Make sure the broth is truly boiling. A technician rushes over with a thermometer, and suddenly you realize how ridiculous this all is. Would modern law firms need culinary consultants? Would defense attorneys argue for mild broth instead of extra spicy to protect their clients? Now imagine corporate scandals. Instead of endless hearings, CEOs line up at a giant noodle pot. If your hand comes out unscathed, you're innocent, the announcer booms. Stock markets tremble, food bloggers explode with hot takes, and somewhere a Michelin star inspector scribbles, "Justice, but flavorful." As absurd as this vision is, it exposes something deep. Centuries ago, people trusted pain and chance more than evidence. Today, we've traded cauldrons for contracts, but the urge to dramatize justice never went away. Think about reality TV court shows, viral courtroom clips, or debates over trial by media. Maybe in a strange way, we've kept the theater, just swapped the boiling pot for a camera. So you sit there in the gallery, torn between horror and laughter. Would you dare to dip your own hand into justice soup? Or would you politely ask for the vegetarian option? You sit there as the mist of time curls around you, and the scene slowly changes. The crackling fire, the boiling cauldron, the brutal ordeals you once witnessed, now fade away like a dream dissolving at dawn. Instead, you find yourself in another hall, a cold stone chamber, where long wooden benches are neatly arranged, and in front lies a desk covered with manuscripts, wax seals, and scrolls of law. We are no longer in the 10th or 11th century. This is 13th century Europe, where the trial by ordeal, tests of fire, water, and divine chance began to vanish from legal life. The Catholic Church, once the firm supporter of God's justice, now forbids it. In 1215, the Fourth Lateran Council officially declared that the Church would no longer take part in or sanction these brutal trials. You imagine the ripple echoing across Europe. Judges, lords, and townsfolk blinking in confusion. If God was no longer invited to judge through boiling water or burning iron, then who would decide right and wrong? Thus began a slow but profound transformation. Instead of waiting for divine signs, courts turned to evidence. Witnesses were summoned, testimonies were recorded, documents became the new tools of justice. You picture yourself sitting in a 14th century trial, a merchant accused of fraud, but instead of dipping his hand into boiling water, he must now face a lawyer holding a scroll, reading aloud the testimony of witnesses. Justice was now written down, no longer entrusted to fire. And yet, you realize this change was not always neat or perfect. As a lawyer spins tricky questions, you wonder, is this really more fair, or just a new kind of game with words? Trials could still be manipulated, evidence could be forged, and witnesses could lie. But at the very least, humanity had stepped away from the days when pain itself was treated as truth. Looking around the chamber, you notice quills dipped in ink, hear the rustling of parchment, and sense the shift in atmosphere. A new form of justice rooted in reason and record, fragile though it may be. A question lingers in your mind. Was this the first step toward the modern courtroom? Or simply the replacement of one belief with another, from fire and water to words and writing? The centuries keep turning, and you remain seated in the gallery of history, watching as the medieval hall morphs into something more familiar. The dusty scrolls and flickering torches give way to polished wood panels, powdered wigs, and a gavel striking against a desk. You are now in an early modern courtroom, perhaps 17th century England or France, where trials are no longer divine ordeals, but carefully orchestrated spectacles of law and rhetoric. The change is undeniable. Yet as you lean forward, you notice something. Beneath the polished manners and Latin phrases, the same old tension remains. Imagine for a moment that you are called to serve as a juror in this world. The case: a farmer accused of theft. No boiling cauldron, no glowing iron. Instead, a barrister launches into a grand speech, weaving words so dazzling you almost forget what the farmer is even accused of. Evidence is presented, yes, but some of it shaky, some of it conveniently missing. A witness swears an oath, but you see the nervous twitch of his eye. Justice here is not boiling water or freezing ponds. It is persuasion, eloquence, reputation. And you start to wonder, have things truly changed as much as we think? If the ordeal was once about divine intervention, now justice leans heavily on human performance. What if the clever lawyer replaces the priest, the courtroom replaces the church square, and words replace fire and water? Different tools perhaps, but the same struggle to decide guilt or innocence in a world where certainty is rare. You picture a parallel universe where the two systems never parted ways. What if lawyers still made their arguments, and then, as a final act, the accused plunged their hand into boiling broth to seal the verdict? It's absurd, you laugh, but part of you wonders whether medieval villagers might find our world just as strange, trusting ink marks on parchment or the shaky memory of a witness rather than the hand of God. The transformation of justice, you realize, has always been layered. First ordeals, then oaths, then evidence, and eventually the forensic sciences of our own era. Each stage claimed to be more rational than the last, yet each carried its own flaws, blind spots, and biases. Watching it unfold through the centuries, you are struck by a thought both unsettling and comforting. Justice is not a fixed truth handed down from on high. It is a living thing, shifting with culture, belief, and time. And so, as the echo of the gavel fades and the wigs of powdered judges dissolve back into mist, you're left with the question: in all our striving for fairness, are we truly more just, or merely dressed in the fashions of our age? The fire has dimmed now, and the echoes of laughter from your imagined hot pot courtroom have softened into silence. You lean back, almost drifting, and realize that you've traveled through centuries of justice, from boiling cauldrons to forensic labs, from priests in robes to lawyers in suits. Strange, isn't it? What once seemed like divine fairness now feels absurd. Yet in 100 years, perhaps future generations will look back at us and laugh just the same. Wait, they might say. People trusted tiny swirls of DNA and grainy camera footage to decide fate? How quaint. History has a way of humbling us. Each age believes it has found the key to fairness, yet every system reveals cracks, loopholes, and human flaws. Maybe that's the real mystery, not whether ordeals worked, but whether true justice has ever existed at all. And so, as you drift towards sleep, let the thought linger. Justice is less a destination than a mirror. It reflects what a society believes, what it fears, and what it hopes. Sometimes it boils, sometimes it burns, sometimes it speaks in Latin, but always it tells us more about ourselves than about truth.